Imagine a world where every handshake hides a dagger, where every smile conceals ambition, and where every promise is nothing more than a strategy. In this world, love is fragile, fleeting, and conditional, but fear is eternal. This is the world Niccolo Machiavelli saw, the brutal theater of politics and human nature, where affection fades, but fear roots itself deep into the human heart. Today we unravel Machiavelli's timeless lesson, why fear will always defeat love. When you look around in history, the emperors who reigned the longest, the rulers who commanded absolute loyalty, and the leaders who left their mark on centuries were never the ones most loved. They were the ones most feared. Love binds you with silk threads, beautiful but weak. Fear binds you with chains of iron, unbreakable and enduring. Love is given when convenient, withdrawn when costly. Fear, once instilled, becomes instinct, automatic, and self-reinforcing. Machiavelli understood that man is selfish, fickle, greedy for gain, and quick to betray when the winds of fortune change. But fear operates below reason. It strikes the soul where calculation cannot interfere. That is why a prince who chooses love over fear is like a sailor trusting calm weather, but a prince who embraces fear is like one who builds his ship to withstand storms. Fear is not about cruelty for its own sake, but about creating a reality where betrayal becomes unthinkable, where loyalty is no longer a choice, but a necessity. In your own life, think about it. The teacher you respected most may have been kind, but the one you never dared to cross is the one whose lessons you remember forever. The boss who smiled may be liked, but the boss whose authority was unquestionable is the one people obeyed without hesitation. Even in personal relationships, love can warm the heart, but fear prevents chaos. Without fear, society collapses into weakness, betrayal, and endless conflict. This is the hard truth Machiavelli saw. Love is voluntary and unstable, but fear is compulsory and reliable. If you want power, influence, and control, if you want to survive in a world where people are driven by self-interest, you must understand why fear is stronger than love. Machiavelli did not romanticize humanity. He stripped away illusions and stared directly into the raw, often brutal truth of human nature. He wrote that men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. They love when it benefits them, and abandon love when it costs them. This is why love can never be the foundation of power. Imagine building a castle on sand. The moment the tide rises, it crumbles. Love is that sand. But fear is stone. Fear endures storms. Fear creates certainty, where affection creates only doubt. A ruler loved by his people may sit upon a throne of praise, but the moment fortune shifts, those same voices of love become voices of betrayal. History is filled with kings who believed love would save them, only to be abandoned in their hour of need. Julius Caesar was adored by many, yet when conspirators raised their blades, not even the love of his closest allies could shield him. But Genghis Khan, feared across continents, carved an empire so vast it shaped history itself. Why? Because fear compels action, where love invites choice. Machiavelli argued that people will betray you when they no longer fear consequences, but they will obey when the cost of betrayal is unbearable. This is not cruelty, it is realism. To rule with fear is not to be a monster, but to recognize that without discipline, loyalty collapses into chaos. Love without fear breeds weakness. Fear without love breeds control. Even in modern life you can see this truth. Politicians campaign to be loved, to be liked, to be admired. But the ones who remain in power, decade after decade, are not those who are adored, but those who are respected, sometimes even feared. The CEO who runs his company on love may be popular, but the CEO who runs it on fear ensures efficiency, discipline, and results. Parents who raise their children only with love may be cherished, but parents who balance love with fear raise children who listen, who respect, who follow. Machiavelli's brilliance was not in saying that love is worthless, but in revealing its fragility. Love is a luxury, fear is a necessity. Love may strengthen bonds when times are good, but fear guarantees loyalty when times are hard. Ask yourself, when betrayal tempts someone, when greed whispers, when ambition burns, what stops them? Not love, not kindness, not gratitude, only fear. Fear is the invisible chain that binds loyalty to action. Fear ensures that betrayal becomes unthinkable. That is why Machiavelli insisted, it is far safer to be feared than loved. Safer, because safety is the foundation of power. Power that is fragile is no power at all. Power that is permanent, enduring, untouchable, that is built not on affection, but on fear. And so, the prince, the ruler, the leader, must master fear. Not cruelty for cruelty's sake, but fear as strategy. A fear that commands respect, a fear that prevents treachery, a fear that ensures survival. For in the end, men do not remember kindness when ambition blinds them, but they never forget fear when consequences loom over them. Power is fragile when it rests on love, but it becomes unshakable when it is rooted in fear. This is the essence of Machiavelli's most controversial idea, the truth that has outlived kingdoms, dynasties, and nations. To understand why, we must dive deeper into the psychology of man. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, deceivers, fearful of danger, and greedy for gain. It is not an insult, it is an observation. Look around, even today, and you will see it is true. People claim loyalty when it suits them. They show affection when it benefits them. But when the winds change, when fortune shifts, they abandon those they once adored. A leader who builds power on love builds it on a foundation of shifting sand. But a leader who builds on fear builds it on stone, and stone does not crumble when storms arrive. Fear is more than emotion, it is instinct. When a soldier obeys an order, it is not because he loves his commander, it is because disobedience carries a price. When a nation respects its ruler, it is not because they all feel affection, it is because consequences loom large for those who betray. Fear speaks to the most primal layer of the human brain, the layer older than reason, older than morality. Love requires memory, trust, and continuity. Fear requires only survival. That is why fear endures even when memory fades. History is the greatest proof of this truth. Consider Alexander the Great. Loved by many, yes, but feared even more. His soldiers admired him, but what kept them marching thousands of miles into unknown lands was not affection. It was the authority of a man whose wrath was legendary. Or consider Vlad the Impaler, whose reign of terror carved fear so deep into his enemies that his legend inspired Dracula. Love did not keep his kingdom safe, fear did. Even in Rome, emperors who sought love, who tried to be too merciful, too kind, too forgiving, were overthrown, poisoned, or forgotten. But emperors who commanded fear secured their throne, even if their names were stained with cruelty. Machiavelli was not glorifying cruelty, he was clarifying necessity. He argued that a ruler does not need to be loved. In fact, it is dangerous to rely on love. Love is voluntary. Love can be withdrawn. But fear is not given. Fear is imposed. Fear is permanent as long as consequences remain. Yet Machiavelli also warned that fear must not slip into hatred. Hatred is dangerous because it fuels rebellion. Fear should be balanced, controlled, and strategic. The wise ruler instills enough fear to secure obedience, but avoids cruelty that turns subjects into enemies. It is a delicate balance, but one far safer than love. Think about modern life. In workplaces, the boss who wants to be loved often sacrifices authority. He tries to be liked, but his employees push boundaries, exploit kindness, and slack off. But the boss who instills fear of consequences, fear of discipline, fear of losing their job, secures results. In relationships, people may love when convenient, but when temptation arrives, when opportunity whispers, Love may not stop betrayal. Fear, however, creates hesitation. Fear makes betrayal costly. Fear plants doubt before disobedience. The psychology is simple. Fear is tied to survival. Love is tied to preference. Preferences change. Survival does not. That is why Machiavelli's insight continues to resonate across centuries. He knew rulers could not gamble on love, because human affection is fickle. Instead, he urged leaders to secure what is reliable: fear. And this is where the brilliance of Machiavelli shines. He did not write for philosophers who dream of utopias. He wrote for rulers, men who lived in a world of blood, steel, and betrayal. He gave them truths that would keep their thrones intact. And so the final lesson emerges, sharp as a blade hidden in the folds of history. Love is fragile, but fear is eternal. For love depends on the goodwill of men, and men are fickle, selfish, and ungrateful. But fear depends only on survival, and survival never fades. And Machiavelli knew that to rule men, you must not appeal to their higher nature, for their higher nature is a mask they wear. But instead you must command the nature they cannot escape, the instinct that drives them when the mask falls, the instinct of fear. And this is why he wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved, for safety is the foundation of power, and without power you cannot rule, you cannot endure, and you cannot shape the world. And so if you would be wise, do not waste yourself chasing affection. Do not shackle your destiny to the fragile chains of love, but instead learn to cultivate fear with precision, never with cruelty. For cruelty alone breeds hatred, but with discipline, with silence, with reputation, with the occasional strike so sharp it echoes longer than 1,000 words. For this is how rulers, kings, and emperors have built empires that lasted, not by drowning in love, but by mastering fear. And if you look into your own life, you will see this truth at work even in the smallest details. In your workplace where respect is given not to the kindest but to the firmest, in relationships where desire is held not by endless affection but by the fear of loss, in politics where votes are won not by promises of love but by the warnings of fear, in the marketplace where billions are spent not in hope but in fear of missing out, proving that fear is the quiet architect behind the illusions of love. And once you see this, once you grasp it as Machiavelli did, you cannot unsee it. You cannot return to the delusion that love rules the world, for love is an ornament, fear is the foundation, love is a whisper, fear is thunder, love asks, fear commands, and the one who commands is the one who rules. And so the Machiavellian path is clear. Do not despise love. Use it when it serves you. Cloak your rule in kindness when it is useful, but always keep fear at the core. For love without fear collapses, but fear without love endures. And as the centuries prove again and again, it is not the beloved prince who survives, but the feared prince. For beloved princes die with their people's affection carved on their tombs, but feared princes leave dynasties, nations, and legacies carved in stone, unbroken, unchallenged, eternal. And so remember this law: love fades, fear lasts forever, and in the psychology of fear lies the secret to absolute power.